Namaste, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Where we had stopped last time was the introduction of Indian eras, and this is a very important topic to understand and get a grasp of in order to be able to reconstruct Indic chronology from primary texts. So if you look at the table on this slide, let me enlarge it, maximize it. So if you look at the Indian eras, these are the dates based on which Hindus had calendars. And so the first calendar, what we have done is omitted very larger eras, older eras. What we have focused on is the more recent ones, especially from the Mahabharata war, because that is closer to us in time. And also because all of the distortions were done for dates after the Mahabharata war. And so we're trying to highlight the important eras from the Mahabharata war till modern times. So Yudhishthira Saka 3138 BC was a calendar that was started after the Mahabharata war. And then you had the Kali era. And then, of course, you have the Vikram Samvat, which is still in use. You also have the Salivahana Saka, which is also in use. And you find many calendars related to this. Of special interest here is the Kali era, 3102 BC. This is non-negotiable. And we went over this the other day. It's a precise date. It is February 20th, 3102 BC at 2:27 in the morning. And it coincided with Sri Krishna's Niryana. What astronomically, it was an astronomical event. And there were 7 celestial bodies in conjunction in the Mesha Rasi. It was Pramadi Chutra Sukla Pajami, which is a proper Yugadi. Yugadi means the beginning of a Yuga. And of course, our Panchangas and our Nitya Sankalpa changed from Dwapara Yuga Turiya Pade to Kali Yuga Pradava Pade. So this is significant. This is non-negotiable. It's an absolute marker in time. So there is a calendar based on the Kali era. Now, the Cyrus era here in red, 550 BC, is important. And this is where Pandit Kota Venkatachalam introduces Persian synchronism. And it's necessary. And as we talked earlier, synchronism is necessary to connect the two calendars, because otherwise it is not possible to translate a date from the Christian calendar to any Hindu calendar, or from any Hindu calendar to the Christian calendar. It is not possible. You need an event that connects the two. And now, in making the distortions, William Jones and the mercenaries of the East India Company actually used Alexander's travel to the east, and that's how they were trying to connect Chandragupta Maurya to Alexander, which is wrong, because the contemporary of Alexander was actually Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty, not of the Maurya dynasty. So that was where the distortion started, and our dates got moved forward by 1200 years. So that was the Greek synchronism used by East India Company. What Pandit Kota Venkatachalam said, that is not useful, because Chandragupta Maurya was not a contemporary of Alexander. So he started looking for Persian, some other synchronism that would connect the two calendars. And he was able to establish 550 BC as an event where the Cyrus era started, where Cyrus the Great in Persia actually defeated his enemies and started the Median Empire. And so that is significant. And this, I could say, is the linchpin in reconstructing Indian chronology. And a lot of dates depend on the correct identification of the Sakakala. And if that Sakakala is not identified correctly, all the dates that depend on it will shift, and reconstruction will not be correct. And the most recent are the Vikrama Samvat, 57 BC, still in use, Salivahana Saka, still in use. I tried to look for Hindu calendars on the internet, hoping I could find one that actually showed all 3 dates. But I can tell you that there used to be. Can you see the screen? What I'm trying to do here is basically So let's say you want 2023 in the BCE/CE calendar. I think we can ignore all this. So if you ignore all of that, so let's put for uniformity, we'll put the date afterwards. All right. So 2023 CE, this is how you would write it in the Vikrama Samvat. This is how you would write it in Saka Samvat or Saka Kala. And if you had to represent the same thing in the Kali Saka, what is the number we came up with?
5125.
Okay. All right. So now do you see how this date in the Christian calendar is written in Hindu calendars?
Yes.
So the reason I'm trying to point this out and spending time on this is if you have to reconstruct Indic chronology from our own text, from Sruti and Smriti, these are the eras you will find. You will not find the Christian calendars in our Sanskrit texts. You will find dates in the Vikram Samvat, you will find dates in the Saka Samvat, you will find dates in the Kali Samvat. Yes?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And so it is important to understand how the representation will be in the text that you will look at, and you need to be able to translate that into a date in the Christian calendar, which is not possible unless you've got synchronism of some kind. So that is why these dates become important. So now, Yudhishthira, let me see. So actually, Kali would be this. Now, the same thing you could represent in Yudhishthira Saka. Okay, Yudhishthira Saka. What would that representation be? 5125 plus 36 is how much? Yudhishthira Saka 5161.
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, all of these dates are the same. They are all representing the same dates. They are expressed differently. So let's just remember this, and then let's move on. So I went over this last week. Was there anyone that missed this? Do I need to cover this again? This is important. It's very important that we understand this. Was there?
We understood this. We understood it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone that was not here last week that needs to understand this? Otherwise, I can skip over it. Hello?
I don't need to, but if I have questions, I'll come back to it. You can skip it for now. Is that okay?
Well, I suggest we not skip it. It's important that you understand what this means.
Okay. Okay.
This is sort of the key to the reconstruction.
Okay, then you can go over it. Thank you.
So the word Saka, Panditji says, has two meanings. And this is in a book that he wrote called Indian Eras. And it's in English. It was published in 1956. In that, he writes that there are two meanings to the word Saka. And that the first meaning is that it means powerful, strong, or mighty. These are adjectives, but then they're applied to, originally it applied to a country. So you're talking about a powerful country, a strong country, or a mighty country, meaning Sakasthana, place of the Sakas, meaning country. And that was Persia, because that's where all the Sakas actually migrated from Bharatavarsha. Later, it was changed to refer to the people of that country, meaning not the country itself, but the people. So Sakas are Persians. So that's one meaning. And of course, we have references to this in ancient texts, and some names are listed here. But then eventually it was changed to a singular form. It did not refer to a large number of people of a particular country, but it was changed to a singular form to refer to a king of the Sakas, or a king of the Persians. So when you see the word Saka, one meaning today, or today the way it should be interpreted is the king of the Sakas, or a Persian king is one meaning. The second meaning, Kala or era or epoch, So, like in the example we saw here, you have Vikrama Samvat or Saka Samvat and so on. So you're referring to eras. So the second meaning would be an era. And the point over here is, what does Sakakala mean? See, the reason this became important is because Western Indologists said Sakakala means Salivahana Saka, which means 78 AD. And they froze that in time and did not allow interpretation. So they said Sakakala means this era here at the bottom. And if you adopt this and apply it to what you find in our texts, your dates will be off because you have to understand the date in context. So Salivahana Saka is probably where a lot of the problems started. So the question is, Panditji says, what is Sakakala? And why should we use it only for Salivahana Saka and not to the others? And then, so he says, was Sakakala known by historians and astronomers in the past? And did anyone use it? And the answer is yes. And he found, here are examples. Vriddha Garga. Vriddha Garga uses second Rapakala, meaning era of the Saka king. Now, Vriddha Garga lived around 500 BC. 500 BC. Varahamihira, who lived in the 1st century BC, meaning 400 years after Vriddha Garga, uses Sakabhupakala, Sakendra Kala, which mean the same thing. It's the era of the Saka king. So you have two great astronomers who have written the Garga Samhita and the Brihat Samhita, respectively, both of them referring to the same Sakakala. So now, if Vriddha Garga wrote this in 500 BC, could he be referring to Salivahana Saka? I want to see how many people have been listening. When is Salivahana Saka? Okay, Salivahana Saka is 78 AD. Yes?
Yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if Vriddha Garga wrote that in 500 BC, could he be referring to Salivahana Saka?
Not definitely. No.
And if Varahamihira in the 1st century is referring to Saka Nupendra Kala, could he be referring to Salivahana Saka?
No, no, no.
All right. So does that at least eliminate the fact that Vriddha Garga was not referring to Salivahana Saka and nor was Varahamihira, and therefore Sakakala does not equate to Salivahana Saka? Is that I guess, can we agree on that?
Sir.
Now, can we agree that Sakakala is not Salivahana Saka, based on the fact that we find actually 5 references. Vriddha Garga uses it over here, 500 BC. Varahamihira, 1st century BC. Then Bhattotpala, of course, came much later. Bhaskaracharya also refers to this. And Kalidasa talks about this as well in Jyotirvidabharana. And Kalidasa was also 1st century BC in the court of Vikramaditya. Could he be talking about Salivahana Saka?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. So here is what was done by the English. What you see is on the right, the table on the right shows the distortions. So the original table, this is the original table. This is the original table that shows all the important eras in chronological order, or reverse chronological order, or starting with the Mahabharata war coming up to modern times, or near modern times. So this slide here tries to show you the same information over here on the left. And what is on the right is the distortions made by the Western Indologists. So you see that Yudhishthira Saka, which is the Mahabharata war, was moved from this date to this date. And Kali era moved from this date to this date based on their distortions. Yudhishthira Kala Saka, Saptarishi Saka moved from 3076 BC to 1869. They Cyrus era, they don't even account for. Sriharsha era, they have removed entirely. The Gupta Shaka has also been removed. Vikrama Samvat has been equated to Malavagana Shaka, which is over here, 725 BC. So they've moved this era to coincide with Vikrama Samvat. And they said Salivana Shaka is called Sakakala, and the Guptas were moved to 4th century AD. And the Sriharsha Shaka was moved to 7th century AD. So this tries to show in summary form the distortions. This is, once they change the calendars, your dates will change. Everyone good with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the mess that we have to reconstruct.
So what would be the like logical reason?
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Any reason they have, or just they distorted that thing?
They distorted it because William Jones could not accept a date older than 4004 BC because the Bible says that the world was created in 4004 BC.
Okay.
And so I think we covered this in an early slide. Let me go back and find that slide.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I remember. Thank you.
Okay, here, can you see this slide? Hello, can you see this slide?
Yes, sir. We can see.
Okay, William Jones, he believed that the Bible said the world was created in 4004 BC, so he could not accept any date earlier than that, and he decided that to fit with the Bible's dates and to establish the superiority over the Westerners over Easterners, he decided that Indian history had to start in 2029 BC. That he could not accept that the Indian civilization could have been older and more intellectually evolved. So he decided that Indian history had to start in 2029 BC. And so because of this, he had to introduce all these distortions in all of these documents. And then having introduced those distortions, he said, well, we can't use them. They're not reliable. They don't agree with one another. And so he rejected those and did his distorted construction based on these dates. So so once he established that synchronism, he had to show some relevance and provide dates for things that were well known, although he did not use them extensively excuse me, I feel a sneeze coming. So he did refer to these dates, but just provided the dates that he distorted them to, did not use them extensively. Okay, so
Yes.
based on this, so now do you see when they have made all of these distortions, then reconstruction becomes a very big challenge. So this is the problem that Pandit Kota Venkatachalam found himself in 1908. That was about 115 years ago. So when he started his research. So again, let's go back and see what was his methodology. His methodology in reconstruction was well, we know this. Okay, his approach was establish the sheet anchor first, which is the Mahabharata war, and then follow genealogies of long-lived kingdoms, meaning Hastinapur, Magadha, Ayodhya, Kashmir, Nepal. This is important because all of these existed at the time of the Mahabharata war, and their genealogies are in the Puranas. So Hastinapur, of course, was the seat of the Kuru Empire, but this didn't last for more than 100 years after the war. So Hastinapur sort of went away, and then the big kingdoms that are long-lived kingdoms until modern times were Magadha, Ayodhya, Kashmir, and Nepal. So basically, he established the Mahabharata war as the correct sheet anchor, and then he followed the genealogies and correlated historic personalities and historic events across those genealogies, across those texts, reconciled that with the contemporary literature. He also reconciled that with chronologies of Nepal, with Kashmir, with Persia. He also reconcile them with Buddhist texts and Jain texts, because Buddha is referenced in Buddhist texts and Mahavir Jain is referenced in Jain texts. And we also see accounts of their contemporaries. For Shankaracharya, for example, was the contemporary of Mahavir Jain, the 24th Tirthankara. So in Jain texts, they refer to historical personalities like Kumarila Bhatta. And Kumarila Bhatta was a student of Mahavir Jain, and he was the contemporary of Adi Shankara. So you have multiple sources that talk about historical events and historical personalities, and you have to do this kind of triangulation to ensure that any date that you have is absolutely correct. So that was the approach. So let's go back. So now that we've covered Indian eras and we understand the distortions that were made, okay, these are the distortions that are made. So now the challenge is to reconstruct, and we know the approach. The approach was to do the Mahabharata war first. So what are the evidences for the Mahabharata war? We have internal evidence, we have astronomical evidence, we have inscriptional evidence. So for internal evidence, for example, Vedavyasa was an eyewitness and the author of Mahabharata. He says that the war took place 36 years before Kali Yuga began. So, in fact, if we go back to the slide I was showing you, this is where that 36 comes from. Yes?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So that's where that 36 comes from, because Yudhishthira Saka is the date of the Mahabharata war. Actually, no, this is wrong. I should actually be subtracting. From this. So whatever that number is, that's
5089.
actually no. Wait a minute. I think this is, see, Kalisaka is 5125. So you have to add 36 to get to Yudhishthira Saka. So this is correct. So this is where the 36 comes from. It's 36. It is Kalisaka plus 36, which gives you the date of the Mahabharata war. Right?
Right.
Hello. Yeah. So because Vedavyasa, this is his Sabda Pramana, he is saying the war happened 36 years before Kali Yuga started. Now,
Okay. Right.
Correct, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vedavyasa is telling you in his own words. He is the author. He is an eyewitness to the Mahabharata war. He is saying the war happened 36 years before Kali Yuga began.
Yeah.
Gandhari,
Mm.
if you're familiar with the Mahabharata, story of the Mahabharata, you will remember that after the war, Gandhari cursed Sri Krishna, that the
Right.
Yadava destruction would take place in 36 years. Is that a coincidence? 36 years.
Right.
And 36 years after the war, Yudhishthira sees bad omens. Sri Krishna sees bad omens, and that coincides with his Niryana. And that is when Kali Yuga starts. So this is the internal evidence from the Mahabharata itself. So if you look at astronomical evidence, let's see. Saptarishi Mandala entered Magha Nakshatra 75 years before Kali Yuga at Yudhishthira's coronation at Indraprastha, not Hastinapur, Indraprastha. And that was in 3177 BC.
So this is where the Rajasuya Yagam was done, right, sir?
Yes.
So does it mean Saptarshi Mandala means 7 stars conjuncted in Magha
Yes.
Nakshatra? That's what I can say.
Yes. See, the Saptarishi, we'll get to the Saptarishi Mandala in a second. See, the Saptarishi Mandala is also called the Big Dipper or Ursula Major. So you're familiar with Ursula Major or the Big Dipper? Hello?
Not heard these terms exactly, sir.
Okay, in English, it is the constellations in the sky. It's called the Big Dipper, or it is called Ursula Major.
Okay.
And it's a group of 7 stars in the shape of a spoon.
Okay.
There is also a similar one with 7 stars in the shape of a spoon, which is much smaller, and that is called Ursula Minor, or the Little Dipper.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So now the point is that the Saptarishi Mandala is a group of stars, and we've talked about our timekeeper, which is the Jyotish Chakra. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Please go off mute. I'd really like this to be interactive.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember this? We talked about the Jyotish Chakra. And in the Jyotish Chakra, we talked over here at the top right. Here, we talked about splitting that 360 degrees into 12 equal portions to represent the Rashis, right? Zodiac sign. So you have 12 Rashis split into 360 degrees. But at the same time, you have 27 nakshatras that need to be superimposed in the same 360 degrees. And if they're all equal in size, then each nakshatra is about 13 degrees and 30 seconds. And so what that means is you can fit slightly more than 2 nakshatras into one Rashi. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the point is, the Saptarishi Mandala also travels through space. And the Saptarishi Mandala stays in one nakshatra for 100 years. Yes?
Yes, sir. Okay.
No, please, can you all go off of mute? Take off mute, please. I really need some interactive responses.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay, so the point is, the Saptarishi Mandala, the movement of the Saptarishi Mandala is also used to corroborate. It is used to validate dates, because we know that the movement of the Saptarishi Mandala is such that it is moving and it stays in a nakshatra for 100 years before it moves to the next nakshatra. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, based on that.
One small point here.
Yeah.
So basically, Aslesha will come before Makha, but here it is written that first Makha came and after Makha, Aslesha entered.
No, sorry. No, yeah, that is not the correct interpretation. This is not saying that Magha is the first. All that this is saying is that Saptarishi Mandala entered Magha 75 years before Kali Yuga.
Okay, okay.
No, please understand. It is not saying that Magha Nakshatra is number 1. That is not what this is saying. This is simply stating that 75 years before Kali Yuga began, the Saptarishi Mandala entered Magha. That is how it is to be interpreted.
Okay, got it. Got it.
And this event occurred when Yudhishthira was made emperor at Indraprastha in 317.
Oh, okay. My point is from the second point, sir. Second point, they say Saptarshi Mandala left Maga and entered Aslesha at Yudhishthira Swargarohana, which is they are talking about the future time. Timing is okay, but after leaving Maga, it should be Phalguna, not Aslesha. That is what my point was.
You're correct. But the point is, the Saptarishi Mandala moves in the retrograde motion.
Okay.
It moves in the retrograde motion. Therefore, it goes in the opposite direction. And that is why it goes to Aslesha after Magha. Yes?
I mean, I never heard this. Okay. Let me know. Let me understand what is Saptarshi Mandala, then probably I can.
I will try and answer it. If you could please be patient and wait for the next slide.
Sure. Yeah, sure. First, let me look at the Saptarshi Mandala exactly.
Yeah. So we're trying to talk about the date of the Mahabharata war and astronomical evidence. So the astronomical evidence is, we know that Saptarishi Mandala entered Magha 75 years before Kali Yuga, and that happened at the time of Yudhishthira's coronation at Indraprastha, which is 3177 BC. So we have one date fixed. 100 years later, we know that the Saptarishi Mandala left Magha, entered Aslesha at the time of Yudhishthira Swargarohana. And that was about 3077, 100 years later. Right? So basically, this helps us sort of determine what am I about to say? Yeah, the Saptarishi Saka. Saptarishi Saka, also called Laukika Abda, Lokakala, Yudhishthira Kala Saka. So that is 3076. And the astronomical event that helps you determine that is the Saptarishi Mandala left one nakshatra, went to the next nakshatra in that year, and that coincides with Yudhishthira Swargarohana. And because it was a big Chakravarti that passed away, they started a new calendar based on that event. Third, Varahamihira quotes Vruddhagarga. Varahamihira, 1st century, is quoting Vruddhagarga, who lived 400 years before. And what is the quote? The quote is talking about, he was referring to Yudhishthira Swargarohana, and he said, if you take that date of the Swargarohana and you subtract 2526 years from it, you will get the beginning of the Sakakala. Everyone with me?
Yeah. What is it this deduction is about?
Okay,
2526.
Vruddhagarga said, if you subtract 2526 years from the time of Yudhishthira Swargarohana,
right.
You will get the beginning of the Sakakala.
Okay.
Which means if you apply the numbers, 3076 minus 2526 is 550 BC, which corresponds to the Cyrus era. Because they were referring to the era of a Persian king. Yes?
Okay, sir.
Now, so basically, Vruddhagarga wrote this in 500 BC. Clearly, he was not referring to Salivahana Saka, which is 78 AD. And 400 years after Vruddhagarga, Varahamihira agrees and he's quoting Vruddhagarga. He quotes and reproduces that sloka and says, I agree with the Vruddhagarga. Kalhana, 11th century AD, when he did the history of Kashmir in Rajatarangini, he reasserts Varahamihira's quote, which in turn is referring to Vruddhagarga's quote, referring to Yudhishthira Swargarohana. So this is important on two counts. One, all three of them were Sanskrit scholars. All three of them, Varahamihira, Vruddhagarga, and Kalhana, all three of them were accomplished astronomers. And all of them were in agreement with one another that Sakakala could be derived by subtracting 2526 from 3076. And that 3076 is the year in which Yudhishthira attained Swargarohana. And this is important because the Kashmir calendar starts with the year 3076. And that is why it is also called Kashmir Abda. You see, Yudhishthira Kala Saka. Yudhishthira Kala Saka means after the Swargarohana. Kala means at the end of his time. Right? It is called the Saptarishi Saka also, because it coincides with the Saptarishi Mandala transitioning from one nakshatra to the other. It is also called, what I don't have over here, let me see if I have it in the other table. Okay, see, it is called Kashmir Abda, because that is the base year for the Kashmir calendar.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Kashmir Abda, Yudhishthira Kala Saka, or Saptarishi Saka. So Saptarishi Saka, all of them are pointing to 3076. So that's important to understand. Okay, now if you look at inscriptional evidence, there are two inscriptions from Janamejaya who says he donated two villages in the 29th year of his reign, which happened in Jayabhyudaya 89. So what is Jayabhyudaya 89? Jayabhyudaya is 3101. So subtract 21 years from that, or yeah, subtract 21 years from that, and you get the date of Janamejaya's. So basically, that gives you one data point, and you can establish the exact date based on Jayabhyudaya 89. The Aihole inscription was one that the East India Company tried to distort. So they actually distorted a couple of letters in the inscription, but then you can tell that it was done deliberately. So they changed a couple of letters to change the meaning. But if you put in the correct letter and interpret it correctly, that correction gives you the date of 3138 BC. So this is inscriptional evidence. Then you have a copper plate on which there is an inscription. And this inscription, copper plate, was gifted by King Sudanva of Gujarat, roughly Gujarat today. Sudanva, and what is the date? The date is 2663 Yudhishthira Saka. And in 2663 Yudhishthira Saka, he gave it to Adi Shankara. This then helps you establish, and this was in the year of Adi Shankara's Niryana. Adi Shankara's Niryana happened in the same year, which is 477 BC. Right? Then there are other dates. So I'm trying to give you a sampling, just so that you have an appreciation for the amount of correlation and cross comparison that is required to establishing this date. Any questions? Right? Okay, so Saptarishi Mandala. What is the Saptarishi Mandala? And this is the key. It moves in retrograde motion. So if the Jyotish Chakra is moving in one direction, then the Saptarishi Mandala is moving in retrograde motion. And that is why Aslesha comes after Maga. So does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you want evidence of this, the Matsya Purana slokas 38 to 41 and 47 describe the motion of the Saptarishi Mandala. So this is the reference that Panditji provides. That the Matsya Purana, these slokas describe the movement of the Saptarishi Mandala. So what does it do? It spends 100 years in each nakshatra moving in a retrograde motion, which means that it completes one complete revolution of 27 nakshatras in 2700 years. Right? 100 years in each nakshatra. So to do the complete circumference, it needs 2700 years. And knowing this and its position at discrete points in time helps you validate and triangulate the dates you may have gotten somewhere else. Now, what else does the Matsya Purana tell you? It says, from the birth of Parikshit to the coronation of Mahapadmananda, 1500 years have passed, meaning the Saptarishi Mandala has traversed 15 nakshatras from the time of Parikshit to the time of Mahapadmananda. And the Matsya Purana also says from Mahapadmananda to the Andhras, another 836 years have passed, meaning the Saptarishi Mandala has traversed more than 8 nakshatras from the time of Mahapadmananda to the time of the Andhras. Right?
So,
Everyone
right.
good with that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, very good. So that's how this can be used to validate dates that you have calculated from other sources. Now, therefore, coming down to how can this be applied? So now if you have to construct the modern history of Bharat, all you need to do is reconstruct and reconcile the histories of Magadha, Kashmir, and Nepal. Why? Because all three existed at the time of the Mahabharata war. Kashmir exists even today. Nepal exists even today. Magadha existed until the 4th century BC. but that's enough to give us Itihasa up to 400, the 4th century BC, and then you have other sources that you can fill in the rest. So, so in this table, what I've tried to do is point out the dynasties that ruled Magadha from the Mahabharata war. So these are the dynasties. What this table shows the name of the dynasty. It tells you how many kings were in that dynasty. It tells you the total that dynasty actually ruled over Magadha, and these are the dates corresponding to the time that they ruled. So you have the Brihadratha dynasty and so on. And then here you have the Maurya dynasty. Chandragupta Maurya belonged over here. And we are talking about the Magadha dynasty and basically Ujjain. We'll get to Girivraja in a second. So this is ordered. 327 to 82. So So you can see that he was the contemporary of Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty. Now, 1200 have the Panvar or Paramara dynasty from 82 to 1193. Now, Vikramaditya 7, which is when he became Chakravarti of Bharatavarsha, 57 AD, BC. And Salivahana was 78 AD. So, the Puranas, the Itihasas, genealogies are consistent from the Mahabharata war, and therefore the Mahabharata war is the sheet anchor. So, if you look at the Puranas, you will find all of the dates are in Yudhishthira Saka, meaning Mahabharata war. So, all the dates are with reference to the Mahabharata war. So, you will actually, I should have stopped to say a couple of other things. So basically, what Pandit Kota Venkatachalam says is that to reconstruct what Pandit Kota Venkatachalam says is to reconstruct Indian chronology from primary sources. These are the three most important eras that we must know. The Kali Saka, Yudhishthira Saka, Saptarishi Saka. So let's take and save this for a second. Okay, so why? So basically, he's saying that we can reconstruct history from these. So we are taking Magadha, Kashmir, Nepal. So if these are our primary sources, if these are our primary sources, then what you will find is Nepal Rajavamsavali has dates in the Kali Saka. Our Puranas have dates in the Yudhishthira Saka. And Saptarishi Saka is used by Kalhana's Rajatarangini. Okay, now do you see how things fall into place? Hello?
Yeah, yes, sir. It is a bit more clear, yeah.
Okay, so now these are the three eras that are the most important. Why? Because the history of Nepal, the only. The Puranas have dates in Yudhishthira Saka. And Kalhana in Rajatarangini uses the Saptarishi Saka. I should have put this on this side. Yeah, Rajatarangini. And why do we want this? Because we saw over here that this is all you really need to reconstruct in a chronology, Magadha, Kashmir, and Nepal. So if you do these three, then you can reconstruct the history from these. Now, here, the Maurya Empire versus Gupta Empire. Why do we need to make a distinction? The reason is the capital of Magadha was Girivraja from the time of the Mahabharata war to the Andhra Satavahanas. Where are the Satavahanas? 800 BC. 800. So from the time of the Mahabharata war to 800, the capital of Magadha was Girivraja. It is in the time of the Gupta dynasty that it was changed to Pataliputra. Everyone good with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now where is the problem? The problem is William Jones. Indica was the book supposedly written by Megasthenes when he visited India. And now that book called Indica refers to a city called Pulibotra. Pulibotra. So now, does Pulibotra seem closer to Girivraja or to Pataliputra? Please respond.
I mean, by name sense, it's Paliputra.
Remember that William Jones was a philologist. You know what philology is? The study of languages. And he was a philologist. So it doesn't take a lot. I'm translating the name, but the point is Pulibotra, Pataliputra are sort of closer than Girivraja and Pulibotra. So in Indica, Megasthenes is talking about the capital of the kingdom he visited, and he called it Pulibotra. So if he is referring to Pulibotra, which means if it meant Pataliputra, could he have been visiting the Maurya Empire?
No.
No.
Because the
Definitely
Maurya
not.
Empire's capital was Girivraja during the Mauryas.
Mm-hmm.
It changed to Pataliputra in the time of the Gupta dynasty, which is 327. So that's number one. Number two, he does not mention the dynasty. He does not say it was the Maurya dynasty. All he does is he identifies Sandrakotas. He also does not talk about Chanakya. So isn't that odd that you talk about Chandragupta Maurya, but you don't talk about his mentor?
Yes.
And then
Yeah, that
he
makes sense.
does not talk about Buddhism at all. Ashoka was influenced by Buddhism. And Ashoka was the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya. Now, Chandragupta Maurya was in 1534, and you will find that Buddha lived 300 years before. So by that time, Buddhism was already becoming popular. And his grandson became one of the greatest exponents of Buddhism. Yet, Megasthenes does not talk about Buddhism. He does not talk about Chanakya. He does not provide the name of the dynasty, but refers to Pulibotra as the capital of that kingdom. So anyhow, so basically the point is, if from the Puranas, this is what you get about the Magadha dynasty. So this is one dynasty. So of the three, yes, we've looked at the Magadha dynasty, and you've got this information.
Sir,
Now,
one small point here, sir. So all these dates, the last column dates you're mentioning, these are all the reconciliation from the writings from Guruji, right? I mean, not the English ones, right? These ones.
yes, yeah. So in fact, if
Because
you
the English one is completely contradicting. I mean, in the general, if you Google Maurya, they are saying only 322 BC.
no, I know what
But
they say because I studied
yeah,
that myself in school. But the point is, it
correct,
was,
correct. Yeah,
it was
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it was distorted. So the question is, what are the correct dates? So the point is, we have to first understand and acknowledge that what you find in Wikipedia is wrong. What you find in our textbooks are wrong. They are wrong because of distortions done by the British. Now, the good thing is that the British are not trying to hide it. They are not trying to hide the fact that they made distortions. So anybody who is interested can actually Google and find the evidence of those distortions. So is there any doubt in anyone's mind that our history was distorted?
Absolutely not.
Okay, does
No doubt
anyone
at all.
does anyone believe that the dates in our school and college history textbooks are correct?
No, because nothing was told accurately to us, right? Everything was completely
but
wrong and false.
no. We were taught certain dates. Okay, that's fine. Now, my question is, we learned those dates. We passed exams by memorizing those dates. But question is, are those dates correct? We know it's not correct because people have distorted it, and the people that made the distortions have not tried to destroy the evidence. So if you Google enough and do some enough research, so Panditji did this in 1908, 115 years ago. He actually did some research to find out 1908 is when he discovered that there were distortions, and so he had resolved to correcting those distortions. So that is where his journey began 115 years ago. So I think it's fairly there is consensus in the fact that our dates were distorted and does require correction. Does anyone disagree with me on that?
No, sir. We agree with you.
So
Yeah.
So if you start looking at the Magadha dynasty, this is what you find in the Puranas. So this is one dynasty. Now you will find information about other dynasties also in the Puranas. So if you had to start comparing, okay, if you do the reconciliation across genealogy, here's Magadha, here's Kashmir, here's Nepal, Ayodhya, Hastinapur. So you look at the contemporary, who are peers, and you find if down the Magadha dynasty, you find Kshemajit, Bimbisara, Ajatasattu. And all three of these lived in the lifetime of Siddhartha of Ayodhya. And Siddhartha of Ayodhya, whose father's name was Shuddhodana and whose son's name was Rahul, is none other than Buddha. So Gautam Buddha is from the Ikshvaku dynasty of Ayodhya. And he was a contemporary of Bimbisara, Ajatasattu, Kshemajit of the Magadha dynasty. So if you can establish the dates of any one of these, you know the general time in which Buddha existed. So this is another way to, this is another way to triangulate, correct?
Correct.
This is another way to triangulate. So, I think we're already at 11:36. Maybe it's a good time to stop. So why don't we stop here and I'll take questions if there are any questions.
Oh, we have done 1 hour.
There any questions?
No, sir. No questions for me today. Yeah.
And Anubhav, you had questions? You had something to say last time.
Yes, sir.